what do I want to be? Like, who do I want to be? Do I want to try and be exceptional? Listen, getting on The Apprentice does not mean you are going to be exceptional, but it's that mindset of taking those opportunities, those leaps into the dark. Everything can be a superpower if you want it to be. So that anxiety when an exam was coming up when I was at university, it powered me to work really hard before the exam.
Absolutely. How important is your personal brand to exponentially growing or enhancing your business?
I hate the word very lucky. You worked for it.
Of course, but you're
because that misleads people. Lucky, you worked for it.
Of course.
Right, Mike, episode 23.
23, I love it. Sounds good.
No, we've got an incredible episode today. We've got a very excited guest, so we're really excited to talk to you about that in a minute. But first of all, just our usual start up, Mike. Wins of the week.
You're all smiles today.
I'm going to start today because we just got a signed contract about literally 10 minutes ago for one of our biggest projects ever. So that's hugely exciting.
Congratulations.
So we're very excited about that. So that's my win. We'll keep it nice and short because we want to make this episode as long as possible for our guest. So win?
Well, I spoke about a win last week, if you remember.
Yeah.
Which I was very proud of. A win that took me many years to get. And when I got to that win, it turned out to be, imagine you got a tiger in a cage, and while the tiger is in the cage and you're on the outside, it's all nice. You want to get close to it. You want to feed the tiger something, and it's beautiful to watch. But then somebody opens the gate and shoves you in the cage with the tiger. Well, guess what the tiger is going to try and do to you? You're just a piece of steak to it. And that's how that relationship has turned out to be. Literally for at least 2-3 weeks, my happiness disappeared simply by getting my dream customer. And how about that for business?
And what is the result of that now? How's that going to play out?
I do not know yet.
What have you learned from it?
What I've learned is, and the way I see it, is that it is all a learning curve. And I see that customer as a person who's actually training me how to be better and stronger. But bloody hell, man, did I expect that? No. And I'm learning how to deal with it on the go. And I'll keep you up to date later on.
With many business journeys, I think it's those lows that actually result in the biggest highs. So hopefully you can turn that into...
It's a very strange low, because it's not a low in financial terms. It's a low in mental demand. And he's absolutely draining me out.
Wow. Hopefully the next 55 minutes
is
not going to be draining whatsoever. Yeah. So we are hugely excited to introduce Lawrence Rosenberg to the podcast.
Welcome, Lawrence.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me.
No, it's a pleasure to have you. And I'm going to read this out actually because your intro is quite long. So I'm going to read this out. So Lawrence Rosenberg is a communication specialist, media commentator, and founder of Rosenberg.Media. Best known for his appearance on BBC The Apprentice, which is the latest season. Regular media contributions and being recognised in the PR Week 30 Under 30. Lawrence has built a reputation around one simple principle: communication only works when it's clear, human and accountable. I absolutely love that introduction. That's the best we've had so far.
Oh. The last sentence is like an arrow into your brain.
Yeah.
That's the best way to describe it. It's really... very, very punchy.
So what we don't want is this just to be a full episode on The Apprentice, because we could talk about that for hours. But I think we do. There are parallels, and we want to start there. So, obviously, many people will recognise you from The Apprentice. What was the driving force into taking that leap into such a big platform?
I think for me, you reach these parts in your life, like these junctures, where you make a choice, right? You're either going to do something that's exceptional, or you keep your head below the parapet. You're like, I'm going fine, right? Everything is good. But you get these moments. So I had an opportunity through people that I've met and networking. I knew a lot about this process, right? And I would never, ever do most TV shows out there. There's a few that, race across the world. If someone wants to chuck some money at me to go on an international jolly, 100%. But I knew a lot about what the application process looked like. And Lord Sugar, he's not getting any younger, right? He's 79 now. And I think when I applied, he was 78. So you're looking at it where I'm never going to have this opportunity again. I'm never going to, and he hadn't signed. He's doing another 2 more seasons now. But at the time, season 20 was due to be the last season. And I was like, I'm never going to have this opportunity again. So I have to have a really honest, introspective conversation. What do I want to be? Like, who do I want to be? Do I want to try and be exceptional? Listen, getting on The Apprentice does not mean you are going to be exceptional, but it's that mindset of taking those opportunities, those leaps into the dark, where, and, you know, like we're saying, this is a business podcast. Every business starts with a leap, right? I always go back to the story. I had the best job I've ever had, but I had to sit there on a sort of cold Friday in February, and I was asked to write a press release about versus genuine printer ink. And I promise you, I wanted to eat the printer ink by the end of it and die. I was like, oh my God. I was like, there just has to be more to life than this. And just to chuck myself out there and do something different, there are a lot of motivating factors behind it, you know. And I think, you know, you guys would say this as well. You know, you have things that get you out of bed on the early mornings, the 4 a.m. starts for me, but I'm sure you guys have plenty of those as well. But, you know, to have the motivating factors to try and be exceptional, that was kind of behind it for me.
So you chose not to sit comfortably, you chose to dive into the deep end.
Yeah, it is really that. You know, I felt so comfortable in what I was doing. Had I wanted to, I'm not saying that I was, but had I wanted to, I could probably have locked myself in, just pure focus, and done a lot of my job in like 2 hours in the day. And I'm working for someone, right? But, you know, for example, when I was working there, part of my job was business development. And it became that not because that was my title, what I was asked to do, but you can earn commission if you bring new clients into the business. So I assume when I'd walk in there that everyone would be doing this, you know, going out after work, networking. I was the only person there doing that. I was the only person. It wasn't a paid role to do that, but anything you brought in is 10% of the business for life. Yeah. I don't even have to touch
I think
it.
It's funny, isn't it? Because I think some people, when you're entrepreneurial, I think you can't. Sometimes I can't get my head around someone just being happy with a 9 to 5 and not worry about things like that. Whereas when you're entrepreneurial, you see that opportunity and you're thinking, right, I'm going to. Sometimes I struggle to see, like you just said, why isn't everyone doing this?
I completely agree with you, and I think it's a mentality for one, but I actually think, and maybe this is just who I am as a person. I would say I've always been someone that's quite mildly anxious, right? I remember when I was at university, I just had sort of a build-up of things and I wanted to speak to the university counsellor. And they basically said, you're mostly fine. I think I'm mostly fine at least. But said you probably got some mild anxiety, which you're dealing with quite well. But actually that mild anxiety, everything can be a superpower if you want it to be. So that anxiety when an exam is coming up, when I was at university, it powered me to work really hard before the exam.
Absolutely. We've all done that, you know, leave it to the last week.
But it's that anxiety that powers you. You know, we've got a similar mentality. That's why we're all sitting here, right? It's the anxiety to not want to fail. It's the anxiety to not want to regret not having tried. Yeah. And I think that for me is, you do get these odd reminders, and I don't want to be too philosophical because I got rinsed for that on the show, but you do only get so much time. And I think we all can be guilty of forgetting that, you know, life is not limitless, and I forget it all the time. But then to not want to be looking back and go, I actually had that opportunity in front of me and I didn't do it because I was worried what someone else would think, what would happen if it went wrong. I just did it.
So fear of regret.
I think fear of regret.
That is your biggest point out of this. You don't want to have any regrets there and think that why I never took it, why I chose being comfortable instead of being there fighting for what I want.
I think there's two sides to it. I think that's the negative perspective on a drive, and that it's not necessarily a bad thing. It's a good thing. It's powered me to do things. But actually, from the positive side of it as well, life is experiences, right? I remember hearing a saying that lucky people, they followed them for a study. And lucky people walked slightly different ways home each day. And, you know, it was really small things in their mentality that they just walked it to see a slightly different path home. And I think you've got to sometimes walk that road, right? You've got to have a slightly different mentality of putting yourself out there, being positive, just experiencing things. Like, life is for living and experiencing things. You know, I've been saying this to people, it's really random, but I was watching on Race Across the World, the most recent series. I never usually watch TV, but needed something post-Apprentice. I saw they went to Kyrgyzstan, right? Most people don't even know that Kyrgyzstan exists as a country. Yeah. And it was so beautiful. Yeah. But that is almost like an acronym for life, right? Is there are so many parts of life which are so beautiful, so fulfilling, but we don't try things, so we don't see them. And now I really want to go to Kyrgyzstan because it's beautiful, undiscovered, something different, and that's sort of business, I suppose, as well. Like doing something.
I really like that.
experiences.
So what you're saying is there's beautiful places there, but we don't know they exist. But sometimes you just got to take that leap of faith to
Got
know
to.
it exists.
Got to. You've
I love that.
absolutely got to. I mean, do you watch Race Across the World?
That's one of my
you?
favorite programs. Yeah.
So I've actually been messaging Harrison from this year. What a lovely guy.
Yeah,
like
yeah.
genuinely. But when I was watching that, to see somewhere that maybe a handful of tourists, I mean, that's obviously an exaggeration, but an incredibly small number of tourists. If we looked it up now, it's probably less than 1 million tourists from like outside of Central Asia each year visit there. The landscapes were breathtaking. The culture was off the scale.
Yeah.
The people could not have been friendlier.
Yeah, they were so lovely, weren't they?
But they were so wonderful.
Yeah.
And 99.99% of people will never experience any of that because they don't take that leap.
And actually, what I find when I'm watching Race Across the World, it just restores your faith in humanity a little bit.
100%.
Because there is actually a lot of nice people out there.
Restores my faith in production companies.
So Rosenberg.Media, I just want to go back to, again, so you say when you applied for The Apprentice, where were you in the world of business in terms of Rosenberg.Media? And I guess then taking that leap of faith to go on The Apprentice, presumably, with anything like going on that, there's going to be pros and cons. There's going to be things that can really excel you, but there's also going to be a lot of negativity around it. How did you kind of weigh that all up and then tie that in with your business journey, essentially?
Yeah, I mean, it's a great question because for me, I didn't have a business. I was a senior manager at a PR agency. Lovely job. Like I said, I loved my time there. I still freelance and I do bits of work with them. We partner on projects. It's great because it was an amazing job and they do really impactful work. But the things that I wanted to move to, it just was a leap into the unknown. I didn't know what would come next. I had planned that, I would maybe... Actually, when I went on The Apprentice, I was due, when I left, I was going to come back to work. And I did. I went back to my old job when I got back. I negotiated with my old boss, who is, like I say, one of my very close friends still. He was at my wedding, not because I was being a suck-up, because I genuinely love the man. But... I took all my annual leave.
Hard to believe that, but go on.
Yeah.
Sorry, I had to stick it in.
No. That's fair enough. That's fair enough. I heard it a few times around the office as well, so you're not the first. But no, in all seriousness, like I negotiated a month. I took all my annual leave for the year in one block, and then I took unpaid leave after. At that point, I don't know how long I'm going to be there, but it gave me that push. And, when you do something like The Apprentice, you actually see how much can physically be done in a day. I was almost, I don't want to say a rut because I enjoyed my work and I delivered good work for good clients. But in terms of my business and entrepreneurial and also just that drive to take big next steps, it's very hard when you're very happy, very comfortable, great work-life balance. Listen, the salary as far as a senior manager for a PR agency is pretty much the top end of what you're going to get. It was a good salary as well. He's very generous. But at the same time, to walk away from all of that to, I'll start a business maybe. Why? Why would I start a business? I had a great black book of contacts, but people saying they like you and they enjoy working with you doesn't mean they're going to put their hands in their pockets and hire you to do PR for them. So I wasn't actually looking at starting my own business. And it was only when I came out of the show and, the realities of the experience that actually I started to move my mindset towards entrepreneurialism and actually trying to do a bit more of what I wanted to do, right? So I was doing a lot of tech PR. I like tech PR. I think for me, I wanted to try and do a couple of, or at least move towards, and I can talk about this in a bit about some of my new work, a bit more political stuff that has more direct impact, I would say. I always say about tech PR, it has a humongous impact, especially with the advent of AI on all of our lives. And I think we've discussed this a little bit off camera.
There's lots to talk about with it. Whether it's this episode or whether we build in another one, we will talk
absolutely. But yeah, at the end of it, doing something politically based and along those lines, it has direct impact. Whereas tech, there's almost a few steps before it really impacts people. So like one of the first things I ever worked on was the legalization of medicinal cannabis for like terminally sick people.
Okay.
And that impact is ginormous. I think hundreds of thousands of people now access that medication.
It's very sad because I've heard people who were struggling with serious illness and they had to buy it illegally because here in UK it's not allowed.
No, it is legal now. You can get it prescribed.
They said,
In
things
the
are
past,
changing, but in the past it wasn't.
Yeah.
How do you connect politics with your personal Lawrence that's out there?
I think, for me, I am just who I am. And I think that's the mindset I went into The Apprentice with. I wasn't going to be a different Lawrence for TV. I think we all have our work selves, right? I try and keep my work self, again, as close to normal Lawrence as possible. And I think that's where I built a lot of my rapport with clients and, building my reputation within the industry was because I'm very human with people. When I go out and meet journalists, I'm not transactional. And I think this is really important. And I think this is, for me, something I always love putting on record. And I actually made note of this when I was preparing. I don't like making connections per se. I like making friends, right?
Yeah.
And it's so much better when you're doing business with friends. And, we'll say this once, I'm sure we've said this in the room today already, but people do business with people. Yeah. And, as a PR and even, venturing into politics, there are real people that are impacted by the things you do, and learning how to do things with a human touch, whether it's PR and trying to get my client into the media and my relationship with the journalist, or whether it's, political work and knowing who you need to work with and, how to make them tick and, all of those kind of things. I think it's just about being human, doing stuff that gets you excited, and then it makes work so much easier. I think that's sort of how I tie it in.
So be approachable. It's probably the number one thing top of your list when
Absolutely.
it comes to progress.
100%. And, I learned, my first boss was the former head of news at The Sun in PR. This is former head of news at The Sun. And he said to every client, regardless of where you come from or what your background is, explain your business to me like I'm an intelligent 11-year-old. And the reason they do that, that's no slight on Sun readers, but you can take away from that what you want. But, actually, like the reality is, and genuinely not a slight, is 11-year-olds, they don't really get like context, but they can understand words, right? So you need to make sure that when you're explaining things, it's digestible. And founders very often get this wrong. Yeah. They're so engrossed in the realities of what they do. They're PTD and FTS and all of that. Outside of the industry, even journalists who work in that industry, they're often, if they were experts in the subject, they'd probably be working it. They're not the journalists that are writing about the area. They might be familiar with it, but you've got you at the top who has all of this knowledge. Then you've got the journalist who understands a lot of it. But then you've got the average reader who might not. Speak in ways which are approachable, understandable, authentic, how you would speak to people. Simple as well, especially if you're trying to speak to a wider consumer base. Yeah. You work with refrigeration, right? Most people you speak to, maybe you've got some clients who are experts in refrigeration and all the rest of it. Actually, they don't know the difference between refrigerator A and refrigerator B. You've got to explain to them why that one is better than that one and why it's worth paying the extra money. But how do you do that if it's not understandable?
You know how I learned that? I went and saw this customer many years ago trying to get a £250,000 job. And I spent over an hour talking to him about the technicality and the technical side of the cold room. And you know what he said to me at the end? Mike, I trust you, but I understand nothing of what you've spent your past hour talking about. And that taught me one thing, just like you said, simple, easy to understand, and make sure your person in front of you understands what you're trying to communicate.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I think one of the best messengers in British political discourse at the moment is one of the people I worked with in my early PR days, which is Greg Jackson, who's the CEO of Octopus Energy. And the example I always pull out, because I think this is one of the most important and powerful bits of messaging I've ever seen on anything I've worked on, was during the energy crisis, people's energy obviously became unaffordable overnight. People, were considering whether they were going to put food on the table or turn the heating on in the middle of a cold winter. And the way he explained it to people, everyone was thinking, oh, these bastard energy companies, they've seen, what's going on in Ukraine and they're using it as an opportunity to, rinse me for everything they possibly can. And he said, do you know what a cost per therm is? I'm asking you guys, do you know what a cost per therm is?
No, I don't.
No.
It's a measurement of energy, for which you pay.
Correct. But I mean, you guys, you work in
No,
something
because
that
I'm in the industry.
You're in the
Yeah,
industry.
in the industry. Otherwise, I wouldn't.
No clue. And you're a layperson from outside it, and no clue. I wouldn't know.
He's just so rich he doesn't care. That's right.
Can we talk about PR? No. In all seriousness, I remember him saying that if the cost per therm had gone up as much as the cost of a pint, your pint would now cost you £26 per pint, as in what it would cost for the pub to deliver it to you.
That's
What a brilliant piece of messaging. Yeah. Most people will not understand, even if you say it's gone up 5 times or whatever, it doesn't compute because a therm is not something they understand. It's not something I understand. I understand how much a pint costs, and I understand, well, if it's gone from 5 to 26, oh shit, your energy costs have gone up a lot, and your, supply costs have gone up. So it's that kind of messaging to clients, to consumers, to everyone. Make it digestible, make it understandable.
The art of communication.
I think I need some advice on how to relay the cost increases and why things are costing so much more to my customers.
Going back to the Apprentice, you said that you were completely your authentic self, throughout the series, and I guess that goes with that transparency as well. I imagine there are some people that perhaps acted a little bit and perhaps weren't themselves, but we're not going to go into details of different people. But I think what I want to go into is how did you find that intense kind of process? And then in terms of an entrepreneur, how did you learn about leadership, some of the core kind of business attributes that you need? What did that show teach you about entrepreneurial, and then going into then growing your own business?
It's interesting, actually. So in terms of being myself, I actually think a lot of the edit, especially towards the end, kind of tried to cut away from that. This is another British value, right? We love building people up just to knock them down. It's an age-old thing.
Hey, that's the fun part, man.
That is the fun part. But it is a very British
welcome
thing.
to business,
Yeah, of course. But I had a really good run early on, and I think I got a lot of opportunities to just be myself and be very relaxed. And I felt like a lot of my absolute worst moments, and I'd say I only had a few really bad ones, were sort of really shone a light on. Even things that weren't necessarily negative, you can make anything look funny with a bit of funny music over the background and some weird shots that have been taken, 10 minutes earlier and all the rest of it. You can mix match any of these things. So I actually, watching it back, I did find it quite hard to watch because, there was 2 people I would say who were always just having fun. And that was myself and Kieran. We were on a jolly pretty much for the whole 10-week experience. And I think this is the first thing with business, and this was the same with the show in terms of trying to be myself, is I was genuinely having fun. And I remember saying this, I was being interviewed and we'd lost the task and I knew it was going to be like pretty bad. And they had the camera on me and they said, you must be feeling pretty tense. And I said, for what? It's like, this isn't Squid Games. Let's not take the piss here. Like, if I get...
that's exactly,
Yeah, it's like, if I walk out of here, I'm not going to get shot in the face on the way out.
Lord Sugar ain't going to come and say, you're fired, boom.
Say hello to my little friend. But it isn't that. And I knew, if I got fired, I was going back to my wife. Like, it's fine. I'm okay with it. And I love my job, right? I love doing PR. But a lot of it is sitting behind a screen and just sending emails and communicating with people. I love the parts which aren't, but at some point you do have to do the day job of actually doing some of the work and writing and all the rest of it. And I was like, I could be sitting behind my desk in my bedroom, in an office. I'm out here, I'm writing kids' storybooks and voicing them. I'm selling in a market. I'm pitching in TikTok's building. What do you want me to be miserable for? Like, what is the point? Just enjoying it. And I think as entrepreneurs, I am as guilty of this as anyone. But, why give advice that you don't always take, right? Why not? But trying to enjoy the journey. And I think that makes a massive difference where if you enjoy what you do, there is that expression always, if you enjoy what you do, you never work a day in your life. That's bullshit, right? Because
true, I agree with that. That's total other bullshit that is. If you want to grow, it ain't going to be a enjoyable journey. Let's put it this way.
Exactly. But there are those moments where you're almost, you're sitting in the pub at 6:00 on a Friday and you're looking back at it and you're like, that was great. It wasn't great in every moment of it, but you look back and you're like...
It doesn't. We started this podcast based on that, just to enjoy the journey.
Yeah.
Just for the journey. The end result is whatever it may be. it's the journey, and this is the reason why we'll sit here today.
100%. And that was very much about The Apprentice for me, was enjoying it. And then in terms of what I learned, so I think the first question you asked was about where the skills came from, and then also what it's taught about business and what I'm going to be doing next, right? So for me, I was very lucky. I did a lot of different things that taught me about leadership from quite a young age, even though my time as a leader on the show was sort of
Let me stop you
hard to
there.
touch.
I hate the word very lucky. You worked for it.
Of course, but you know,
Because that misleads people. Lucky, you worked for it.
of course. But, you know, there are certain things, you know, I went to a youth group when I was younger and they had this obsession with training you on how to be a leader. So I had like 4 extra GCSEs GCSE equivalents. They weren't
You
actual.
went, or were you forced to go there?
I mean, I went. Yeah, this is what we mean. I mean, but like to have been a part of a group like that, you know, my parents did it, and you know, my dad was a part of the organization, and then when I was younger, you know, my friends were doing it, so I went, and then you know, I grew through that process, and so that's JLGB, and you know, I did like leadership courses through them, like when I was like 14 or 15.
Wow.
Like, who's doing that shit at that age? Like, it's. You know, most people are out, you know, smoking weed on a street corner. Now, I'm not going to say I wasn't doing that or I was doing that. I'm not incriminating myself on this podcast. You didn't pay me nearly enough for that. But the point of it is, and then, you know, I did Camp America where I was a leader and I won. It was my first summer in Michigan and I'd come from abroad and I think I was the first year member of staff to win Staff of the Summer at one of the biggest summer camps in the United States. So there's like nearly 500 staff and I'd never done a US summer camp before and I won Staff of the Year, right? And it was unbelievable, but I went back for 3 more years and I got to be a leader and this is when I'm 19, 20, 21.
Really?
And it was amazing.
How long are these? Like a week, 2 week?
2 months.
2 months?
2 months. But again, when it comes back to The Apprentice and stuff, I had done stuff where I was away from my family. I was living with strangers. I found that helped.
That's why you felt at home. It was a bit easier for you to...
So much easier. I've been in that environment before.
It seems like with your journey, it's almost like The Apprentice was the icing on the cake to then just drive you forward in your then business journey.
It was a jump.
It feels like everything just led to that point, and then that was almost like the final jump.
Well, it's interesting. You say final jump, but there have been... And I don't want to ruin it because I actually read the script before. Guys, this is unscripted. I'm just joking. I read the script before. But, you know, throughout my career, I'm very lucky that I can actually look back and almost see, I couldn't at the time, a linear journey where one conversation jumped to the next one. And then I made that first jump. And then, you know, that conversation, I followed that along. And then I make the next jump. And The Apprentice was part of that jump. Now, yes, you're right. It's the biggest jump I've taken from somewhere where I was to, you know, making this jump to I'm now being flown out to speak at conferences. I'm, you know, being invited into rooms I never would have been in before. And, you know, I'm here today. You know, I'm someone that's worth you guys speaking to. You wouldn't have been speaking to me 2 years ago, right? And that's for obvious reasons. You don't just grab everyone off the street. You got to do something.
People have to realize you have to make yourself valuable.
Of course.
I will not give you value. You have to earn it.
Absolutely.
And because of that value, we choose to work with you.
Absolutely. But this is exactly it. But it's also, you know, this is brand and reputation, all the rest of it. You've got to know how to shout about it. I know some PRs who are significantly better than me at the day job. They are, you know, at the end of the day, I'm not going to be perfect at everything, but I'm better at talking and I'm better shouting about my wins. And the work that I do, I know how to PR the work that I do.
Yeah, I mean, one thing that I'd kind of, this is totally off scripted, but one thing that I want to talk to you about is one thing that I've built multiple businesses. One thing I'm really bad at is my personal PR. You know, how in terms of growing businesses, how important is personal?
I'm 45 and I haven't bothered with it. I'm focused on making money and building things, but PR.
How important is your personal brand to exponentially growing or enhancing your business?
I always say to clients, because, you know, you take people on as clients, then they're really busy one week and they cancel a meeting and they're, oh my God, I'm so sorry. I'm like, no. PR is a supplement to what you're doing. It should be an elevation of it. It shouldn't become an obsession, which also you go too far the other way and it becomes an obsession for people and, you know, that it's all about ego. No, it should be about adding value. You know, the first thing you do when you meet someone, you know, a new client comes in, I'm guessing you probably do a credit check on them and you probably look them up on Google, right? Now, if you've got no brand on Google, you know, I have people come to me and they've got absolutely nothing about them on Google, but the third-party endorsement of someone looking you up and saying, oh, these guys are legit. And it's not just that, oh, here's the reviews. And that's why everyone's obsessed with reviews now. Whereas, you used to have a Yelp magazine or the AA thing like 20 years ago, but now everyone's obsessed with the reviews and that kind of stuff. Third party endorsement is massive. And listen, you guys you're running a podcast, right? So you are making a dip into personal brand. There's 4 different types. There's owned media, which is what this is. You guys are controlling the narrative. And then there's earned media. But it's all sort of feeding together. And again, this is getting really into the depths of it. But AI is now using all of these things in which to inform itself. So when search is changing, how people look stuff up. I was with a very wealthy investor last week, and she's a little bit older. She says she doesn't use any form of AI, but I start using Claude for research. Well, where do you think Claude gets the information from? Claude gets it all from online. So, looking now at AI, this stuff is becoming even more important. If your owned media matches up with the earned media, I remember, and I'm not going to digress too much more because I do want to come back to the exact question. I launched Rosenberg.Media in November, right? I wrote an article for LBC about the budget and how Rachel Reeves was duffing up the communications around it. And at the bottom of the article, there was a small line that said, Lawrence Rosenberg is the founder and CEO of Rosenberg.Media. The company, the only place it existed was in Company's House. There wasn't an article. I'd done nothing. I didn't even have a website. I asked an AI, an LLM, I said, what do you know about Rosenberg.Media? It said, Rosenberg.Media is a new age PR agency, which is what it also said at the bottom. New age PR agency founded by CEO Lawrence Rosenberg. Would you like to know more about Lawrence Rosenberg? One article, and that's how it informed itself. And I had nothing else, but this kind of visibility is going to become increasingly important. Now, the last thing I would say is, I think to make a jump, your personal brand is becoming more and more important because it's standing out. I don't know every business that you've worked on, but for refrigeration, for example, I imagine there's lots of people in the refrigeration business. But what makes people that much more impressive? Well, it's how they shout about themselves, how they shout about their wins, how they shout about the work they're doing.
Why are we shy to shout about ourselves?
Tall poppy syndrome, I would say, is quite a big problem. It's
poppy syndrome?
So tall poppy syndrome, it's very popular as an analogy in Australia, but essentially anyone who puts their head, so poppies usually grow around the same height, and occasionally there's poppies that grow a little bit taller, and we love cutting them down because they've put their head above. And this is what I was saying, that people, we build them up and then we cut them down. And this is the reality. And I think it is a sickness in the UK at the moment. I think it's a really nasty sickness that we hate success in certain elements. And, this person is successful. How dare they be successful? And people will never admit this, right? But they'll realize it in how they're talking about successful people, not realizing the sacrifices they've made, the things that they gave up to get there and all the rest of it. But I think this is why we're scared of it, because the second you shout about it, you leave yourself open to opinions.
Yeah.
And it's how you digest those opinions that's...
And them opinions will come in thick and fast.
Absolutely.
And a lot of them will be negative.
Absolutely.
Now, there's no reason why anybody can be negative about you.
Absolutely.
But I'm pretty sure you've received quite a few.
Absolutely.
How did you deal with them, or what do you think about them, or what do you think about the people who are actually putting these opinions out there? Because I believe there's a proverb from a famous writer who says, if you don't have something good to say, just shut the fuck up.
Yeah. I think
it's
Socrates,
like people,
right?
It's like the day people have nothing good to say and they're shouting about it.
I think the first thing that you've got to realise with The Apprentice is it's so heavily produced. It's a reality TV show, right? It's reality TV with a business twinge. And so you have to kind of almost accept that people's opinions of you are being based of the produced edit that they're seeing, when the reality that is incredibly different to that. And that can be hard to accept. Now, for me, I was told by a lot of ex-candidates, don't read Reddit, don't read the comments online.
That's what I'm going to do tonight.
Yeah, honestly, but some of them were disgusting. But, these are people that are... What sort of people do you think... And listen, there were some nice ones as well. I don't want to draw with the same brush, because I wouldn't want someone to do that with me. But, the kind of people that spend their lives on Reddit commenting on every single nook and cranny of everything people say, I don't have time to do that. I don't really even have time to watch TV.
It shows where their focus is.
Absolutely.
It's a
And I'm sure, listen, some of these people, I'm sure, and there were some people on there who were hyper observant, who were actually very nice and understanding and actually understood more about the show than maybe some sort of lay viewers might. But I actually tried to read it all. I tried to read everything. And I think it can be helpful to understand how you're being perceived. I mean, some of it was way beyond the pale. I mean, like properly disgusting about indomitable characteristics, how I look, my background, my religion, everything, literally everything got torn apart. And at first, like, I'm not going to say that it bothered me because it didn't really bother me that much. I mean, no one's ever going to read something nasty about themselves and go, oh, great, I love that. But it actually made me much stronger as a person because I didn't just cover my eyes and go, it's not there, it's not there, it's not there. I actually read it and engaged with it, and it made me stronger that actually, I remember when I was younger, right? I ran to be the president of the Union of Jewish Students, and I lost badly, really badly. And I had hit pieces on me. I everything that went wrong could have gone wrong. It was horrible. And I kind of retracted into my shell a bit after that. I didn't want to be front and center of things. I didn't want to be the face of things, right? And I think for me, in what I want to do, being public, being forward facing, all of these kind of things, I've been on LBC, on Ian Dale's show, debating with people now. It's helped me to realize that I have made that jump. I can look at negative comments without taking that as, and that is me. It's like, no, I know who I am. I know what I believe in. I know what I stand for. I know who Lawrence is.
I'm bigger than
But do you
that.
think
I'm more than
yeah.
that.
Is that giving you more resilience and determination to now like succeed and go even further than you ever thought you could go?
Literally 100%. And I say this time and again with The Apprentice, right? I moan about some of the production stuff, the stuff behind the scenes. I did an interview with the business editor of the Times the day after the show, and it's actually in the article. Lawrence bemoans some of the editing bits, but I wouldn't change it for a thing, right? Why wouldn't I change it for a thing? Because what I got out of it outvalues what the negatives were 100-fold.
Yeah.
It's not nice having those things said and all the rest of it, but I am now more resilient. I am, I have got the opportunity to do things I never would have otherwise got to do. And also, just to be completely frank, it's given me the kick up the arse to just try and be exceptional. I want to live a life that's exceptional. I want to have, I want to live these experiences. I want to go out there and do things. I want to go to Kyrgyzstan. I just want to do things, and I don't want to just be enough. I want to try and push it. And I'm absolutely sure from doing that, some stuff will go wrong. But yeah, it's really given me the kick up the arse to just do shit.
I want to be exceptional, and I don't want to just be enough.
Yeah.
We've got to remember these two words or write them down somewhere, because I think that's where most people spend their lives. They don't want to be, they're just happy with what they are, and that's it. And it takes quite a bit of a courage to actually jump and take the next leap.
With The Apprentice, obviously the focus is on you as the contestants, as it were. Obviously, but behind the scenes, you've got incredible business leaders. Whether they're doing the interviews, whether it's on the in the boardroom. Do you get opportunity to get advice behind the camera and support from them as entrepreneurs, or?
So,
in other words, have you got their phone numbers?
Well, actually, yes. Not on the show, right? You don't get to sit there and say, oh, Baroness Brady, would you mind giving me a few tips? I'm sure if I had gone up to her and asked her, she might have, but you get very little exposure. You don't speak to Lord Sugar like off camera. I think it's one of the most common misconceptions about the show is we, after the boardroom, we get to sit down and have dinner and all the rest of it with him. But no, and I think that's probably a good thing for the integrity of the show because you would naturally develop favourites, right? And he is the kingmaker, the decision maker. So you get no exposure to him off camera. So that's not something that happens. So then there's Baroness Brady and Tim. No, not really. Tim is a bit motivational and all the rest of it. I met people through the show who are good business leaders. Dan Miller, who, was also in the final 5. I've done some great work with him. He is a great business leader. He did a great thing by not winning the show because his business is already worth way more than that 250K. And he's helping a huge number of young people in the country and has been for close to a decade. These are like organic business leaders right now.
Yeah.
Now, on the other side of it, I've been very lucky, right? So I went into the interviews with a bit of I'm not really bothered about what the outcome is here. I didn't really want to win, right? I kind of wanted to have the opportunity to go my own way in life. And, I don't think Lord Sugar would be particularly receptive to me being like, well, Lord Sugar, I know you've just given me the 250K, but I'm actually passionate about doing a bit more political stuff. So I'm just going to go and explore that for No, absolutely fucking not. I had no chance whatsoever. What's actually going to happen is he's going to go, no, Lawrence, you've got experience in tech, this, and this. You're going to focus on those areas. And actually in my business plan, a lot of it was Series A tech companies. Well, I don't want to spend my life just doing tech PR, but that's where a lot of my specialism up to this point in my career would have been. So I started to get this gut feeling that it wasn't really right for me. So I actually had nothing to lose in the interviews. I had everything to gain. So I made some quality TV. And actually, with the person that I made the best TV with was Linda Plant. So we were giving it to each other, hammer and tongs. But afterwards, after the interviews, there's TV Linda the same way there was TV Lawrence. And, I tried to keep it as close to who I am as possible because that's what I wanted people to see. But ultimately, I was out of control of that because I don't edit the show. And it's the same with Linda, right? Linda is, a hard-headed business lady, and she is, been at the top of the game for longer than I've been alive. But behind that is someone that genuinely wants to help people. And as soon as the episode aired, she goes, show's over now. How can I help you? I genuinely like you. I want to know how I can help you, what I can do to support you on your journey. She took me out for lunch. We got on like a house on fire. She's mentoring me now and giving me loads of support, which I never would
How
have got.
important that is to have the right people to mentor you. I think we've spoken about this many times. We put that as the number one reason, or the most important thing actually
To do as a business owner.
to do as a business, even to progress in life, in any direction you want to, having a good mentor to actually, well done to that. Don't lose these people.
No, and actually, I don't want to be boring by doing the whole network is your net worth kind of thing. But genuinely, one of the messages we sent between each other, it wasn't like, you're now my mentor. I'm just like, there's this transactional relationship of I'm asking you for things. I've done as much as I possibly can to help her with a few bits as well.
Yeah.
And we've become friends. We were actually saying in the messages, like, our friendship, not like oh, you are, you're above me. She doesn't treat me like that. She doesn't treat, she obviously knows I'm at the start of my journey and understands in the help she's giving me, but it's an actual friendship. And I've got that through throwing myself in the deep end, putting my neck on the line, being slated online a lot. But what have I got out of it? All of those people saying those things, they would love to just meet Linda Plant.
Yeah.
Well, she's my actual friend now. She's invited me over for dinner.
Yeah.
She's supporting me. There's lots of other stuff like that as well. I've got to, see them in places off the show, but not like a real bond like I've got with Linda. So I feel very lucky.
One of the things that we talked about in a recent episode is over the last 6 to 12 months, what's really become prevalent for me is that, and I've always known it, but it's not what you know, it's who you know.
Of course.
And I've always, that's not like a new saying to me, but actually over the last 6 to 12 months, I've really thrown myself into areas where you know the right people.
Of course.
And, like you say, you've thrown yourself into an environment where who you know now is just going to add so much value and impact to you as an individual and a business owner.
And it's people that want to talk to me. And I don't care if the conversation started because I was on a TV show. And, it doesn't matter whether, I bumped into some kids on a train last week and I was speaking to them for like 45 minutes, giving them advice. They're about to go to uni, how I can support. I've been going into schools and helping and giving back. But actually, for me, I don't care where the conversation starts. I just want to make friends. And if we can help each other out, I've got a friend and he is a very, very famous content creator. He's got nearly 3 million followers across TikTok and Instagram. I've got nothing to get from him. There isn't anything I could ask him for, but we're both on that same journey and we're both supporting each other. And, there's a few things I've been able to do for him and people I've been able to introduce him to. This guy was having breakfast with Steven Spielberg this morning. There's no reason for me to be in these rooms, but it's given me that start now. 100%. And I think, the whole thing with the network and all the rest of it, knowing the right people, the best example I can give, and people hate this, right, is Nepo babies. Oh, well, your dad was an actor and now you got to be an actor, or, your dad was a footballer
Well,
and you
let
got
me
to
explain to you. You're here because you're dead today.
Of course.
Just to clarify that, okay?
Yeah, of course. No, but
Not because of The Apprentice.
No. But I'm here because of all of these things as well, of the factors of, the people who supported me and backed me up and, gave me that education and the support. My mum, I was going to go to a really shitty primary school. My mum went and worked in a school kitchen so that I could get a place in that school. I don't think she was buzzing to go and do that. She used to drive the school minibus. I don't come from we were like millionaires when I was a kid. No, my mum drove the school bus to school and then went and worked in the school kitchen so I could get a place in that school.
So you could go onto these leadership courses and become the person you have become today.
Absolutely. Everything, builds towards that. And, my dad, obviously, huge impact as well. But, Nepo babies, there's always this argument of, oh, well, your dad or your mum did this and now you're also famous, but your dad was famous as well. It's because they already were in the rooms before they even started. Well, I'm just picking an example out and I don't know if this is a real one. Oh, I work on Coronation Street. Well, they need a kid. They need a new kid actor who's going to be on Coronation Street. Oh, we know Denise. I don't watch Coronation Street, so I'm picking random names here. Oh, Denise has got a young kid who would love to be an actor. Why don't we just do that? Oh, rather than doing it. That's how these things happen. And this is why nepotism happens. It's because their parents or people they know are already in the right rooms. And that is your network, right? Yes. And this is now for you. It's not nepotism that was given to you. It's nepotism you've earned. You've already built up those relationships with people. And relationships is just everything.
100%.
100%.
How many times we talk about this? Actually, he nearly banned us last week from talking about it because we kept going on about how important it is to surround yourself with the right people.
100%.
And even as since I'm the oldest one here today, okay, this is what I want to be for my kids. I want to be the person they go to for the right answer. I don't want to leave them with a lot of money, although I hate the tax man for taking most of it away. But still, I want to be the right person. Yeah. Don't get me started on taxes, please, because I just.
I do want to go into the kind of PR and communication side of things. So,
absolutely.
And I want to touch upon AI as well. So, in a world where trust feels harder than ever to earn, what separates great communication with those who simply make noise? And then as an offshoot of that, I want to kind of link AI into that because one of the things that we were speaking about before is where it's harder to build trust, but I think to build trust, you want to be as authentic as possible. Then is AI limiting that authenticity? There's quite a few different angles to there. So I know we could talk about this for an hour in itself, but could you just give a bit of insight on that as a bit of a whole?
This is definitely a good starting point because this will feed into the AI. I think first of all, it's having a message and being able to deliver it in a way that people will understand. So, we've already mentioned that intelligent 11-year-old kind of thing, but I think that is really important. I think being able to deliver messages in a way that people can digest it, understand and do something with is really important. Secondly, it's actually having something to say, right? There are lots of people who just want to say stuff for the sake of saying stuff. There are plenty of political commentators out there who have zero expertise in anything. And I think this is actually a lot of the problem with our political system is you've got far too many people in there who have never run a business, who have never actually done anything with their lives. I mean, there's like a 22-year-old in Parliament, right? I personally would make minimum age of Parliament like 25 or 30, that kind of thing, because unless you've got life experience, how can you make decisions on other people's lives without having any yourself? And I think this is, important within communications because you need to have a message, right? You're not just pissing into the wind because, I want my name to be in a newspaper or to be doing this or to be doing that. So I think it's about those two things. So it's about having an actual message and it's about delivering it in a way that people can understand. And I think then obviously it comes into authenticity. You can become almost more authentic. Listen, if I was talking like this the whole time, you would switch off very quickly, even if this was the way that I speak.
You're really boring me. Please,
yeah, exactly.
Please go back to the real one.
Exactly. But, I would...
You nearly put me to sleep there.
Yeah, exactly. If I spoke like that all the time, if that was how I normally talk, you can potentially learn on how to dial it up to become a bit more relatable. And I think relatability and authenticity does play off against each other because sometimes you might not be someone that relatable. Take someone like Jacob Rees-Mogg, but actually you're very authentic. So it's a really difficult one. Like Jacob Rees-Mogg, no one would say is anything but Jacob Rees-Mogg. He is unashamedly extremely posh.
I like the guy.
Yeah, I really like the guy. I think he's a brilliant politician and very interesting, and I like listening to him, even though he sounds nothing like me or any of my friends. I find him engaging. So, and he is pretty monotone as far as things go. So you can find ways around it. It's about finding your voice in a way that's relatable, authentic, delivers a message in a way that people can understand. I think that's all quite important. So listen, AI as at the moment, when we get to AGI, which is a completely different kettle of fish, which is when AI will be able to think for itself, and I don't think we're that far away from it, but this is completely separate subject for maybe a slightly more techie podcast, which I shouldn't be on because I don't understand enough about it anyways. But when we get there, I think the conversation will start to move. But right now, the way LLMs work, and this was part of the argument I was having on The Apprentice, is you have got a computer with trillions of data points that knows all of these things, but it is only regurgitating the things it already knows, which is why you end up with AI telltales, for example. So the most common ones that people know about is, oh, it's not this, it's that. You know, it's not just this, it's that. And I can literally look at AI and I can spot it from a mile off. So even if there is, you know, AI in work which I'm sent, I know how to, rather than just go, no, this is AI, get rid of it, I know how to rewrite it and make it sound human, even if it's being used AI as a basis, which is super common, by the way, because, you know, clients quite often in PR are not, they're not copywriters, they're not PRs, they're not journalists. You know, writing is not their forte, so they just lean on AI because whatever AI is going to pump out is going to be 10 times the speed and probably, to their mind, a lot better because they don't know the difference. But I think in terms of keeping things human, I think everyone does have their own voice. And listen, not everyone in the way they speak will be engaging. It's almost like, sorry to reference Disney here, but in Ratatouille, they have this quote that you've got kids, right? So you've definitely seen that once or twice. I love Ratatouille, but Chef Gusteau says, just because everyone could cook, not everyone should. You know, everyone can cook, everyone can do it. Listen, everyone can write. Everyone, you know, opinions are like arseholes. Everyone has one. It doesn't mean we need to see it. But you know, that is the reality of it. But there are people whose voices do really need to be amplified and do need to be out there. And actually, sometimes they can be people that are scared to make the jump. I don't think using AI to basically craft your opinion, it should be there, as far as I'm concerned, as a research tool, as a baseline, as a basis. If we can do things that make things faster, great. But the human touch is always going to be the be all and end all for me. Until computers are talking to computers and they can do all the work and we can all live on the beach, put our feet up and it can do it all for us, which I don't think we are anywhere close to. I know we're talking about AGI there. You know, you close a business deal because of who Mike is. You close a business deal because of who you are. You know, this is always the bottom line of everything is who you are as an individual and the relationships and all the rest of it. And also how you connect with people. AI is not replacing that. And this was my whole argument on the show, was one of two things will happen with PR because it hasn't undergone, it's starting to now, but it's hadn't undergone a meaningful tech transformation and full integration of what AI and technology can do. You will either have a person that comes in from outside the industry and goes, here's how much money I can make by just chucking AI at things and cutting people out. And I don't think that's what should happen, because I think PR and communications is something that's very human. Or you have someone, i.e. myself, who is incredibly passionate about people, incredibly passionate about what people can deliver and what people can do, and, you know, just the human aspect of work, I think, and actually how we can make people's lives better and the jobs that they can do, making them things that people can be passionate about and the things that only humans can do, right? So I remember, and I had this argument on City AM's podcast. They said, well, actually, you know, doing the shit jobs that, you know, an early executive, you know, in PR, you call it an account executive, you know, those jobs, they really helped me to cut my teeth and they were a learning curve and sort of a humbling. It's like, well, actually, why don't we start people at the point which delivers value that computers can't do from day one? Why don't we get them on the phone to journalists, which people do at the exec level, but not as much because you've got to do all this shit, piss, boring admin. Get people doing things that really add value. Why not? Why not say that we'll cut out the account executive role and we'll start people as junior managers from day one doing the work that really adds value to client. Teach them how to do those things at a higher level from day one, because they know that the reports are going to be done. They know that the coverage logs are going to be done. They know the media lists are going to be done. The brief in the morning doesn't come from reading, or glancing over 100 articles to find 3 which are useful. Use the AI to find the ones that are useful. And, if you want to read the rest of the news in your spare time, by all means.
So it's just basically getting people in higher up the ladder from day one.
100%. And doing the things that only humans can do. I think that's so important.
Yeah,
I think humans are incredibly important to everything. And, that's what I believe in my work, in my politics, in everything. Building up human capital to be the best that it can be, not going, how can we replace them so a tech trillionaire can make an extra billion out of an industry that needs people. That's my view.
So obviously, everything you've been through, then you finished The Apprentice, then you set up Rosenberg.Media. 2-part question, really. What was the gap that you obviously saw and have filled with Rosenberg.Media? And what's the biggest mistake business owners make when it comes to the services that you provide?
So in terms of the gap, I think there is an opportunity for new age communications. I go back to this all the time, and it's my favourite example because it's the easiest for people to understand. No one watches footballers' interviews after the games anymore. You used to watch them, and occasionally, you still do get it in the odd time, but someone will
Do they still do
go
them?
off piece. Yeah, but no one watches them because if you win, you say, it was great to give back to the fans, all the rest of it, and they lose, it's, it's a tough moment for us, we've got to stick together and all the rest of it. We've heard all this shit before. And I think there's so much of media training, so many people have been media trained now that people are all starting to sound the same. And I think that the way, just even communications, you look at Trump, someone who communicated like him 20 years ago would have been laughed out the room, but now he is the president who communicates bluntly and people like it. Whether you can say that you don't, but in America, that's cut through and he is now the president of the United States. So you can't argue with it. Twice.
After being shot as well.
After being shot as well. So whether you like him or loathe him, he's made it to president and he's won 2 elections.
I'd strongly recommend everybody, and I've said this before, his books. The Art of the Deal. There's a few other books from him. They're absolutely brilliant to read.
I think his communication is the number one thing, but getting straight to
PR. I don't think anybody's mastered PR better than him.
But it's long known that pretty much any journalist can pick up the phone to him. It didn't matter when or what time, he was always available, always. And that was very, very, very uncommon, especially back in the day, and even more so now. He is obsessed with his own PR, and look at what he's done with it. But anyway, with the business, I think for me, a lot of the gap in the market is helping people to deliver their message in a way that is actually them, not what they think sounds good, not what they have been told to say, oh, you should say that. You can go off piece now. You can just put yourself out there. And I think some of the best communicators of the past 2 decades, you look at, Pimlico Plumbers, Charlie Mullins.
Come on.
Absolute nutter. Absolute nutter. I'm
a big fan of him.
But what a business.
150 million he sold it for.
And what a business. But he came across as this really boisterous character. But that is what we need more of. And that's what gets cut through. That's what is your, we were speaking about brand earlier, building a brand. Greg Jackson from, he's a normal, authentic, real guy. How can you teach people to do that? So even for me, I think the media training side of it and doing keynotes as, Rosenberg.Media, that's as big as doing actual day-to-day coal-face client work. And in terms of the most common mistake, I think it's really going back to that, because that was the gap that Rosenberg.Media is there to fill, is doing things because they feel like they have to. PR should not be there if it's like, well, it's a checkbox. Well, my business has now got to X size, and because it's got to X size, I've got to do PR. You don't show up to the client calls. You just, when you go to the investors, have you got PR? Yeah, we've got PR. Is it good PR? Yeah, I think so. You don't know. And I've seen that time and time and time again. It is just a tick box. I don't think they have any idea if it adds any value to their business. They're just doing it because they think they should be doing it. They're just going on the radio because they think that they should. Probably no impact. What is your message? What are you trying to get out of it? Because I don't want to be here to do work for people that don't really give a shit about it. I want people who've got something to say, that have got a message. And part of my job, I love the part of my job, which is finding out what makes people unique, what their message is, helping them to craft it, but crafting it in a way that's them. I think one of the things in my media training that was one of the first things, so my media training course that I sell, I've been media trained by 3 different people: former head of news at The Sun, former Sky News anchor, and the BBC from The Apprentice. And the one thing from all of that, I digested all of that information, built my own syllabus. And the one thing that I took away was the media's changed. The media has changed. You know, they used to teach back in the day, it's 90% preparation and 10% improvisation. You guys, as in the people sitting in front of me, you're the experts. You know about that subject back to front. Don't go and deliver it in a picture perfect way. People don't resonate with that. People resonate as long as you're prepared for, listen, there's the trip ups, all the rest of it. My media training covers that. I think media training should cover, you know, all of the tricks that journalists try to play. They still play those. But once you've got those mastered, just delivering your message in a way that's authentic, engaging, really delivers something that adds value to people's lives. And I think that's part of the fun of it. And I think that's the biggest mistake that people make, is not doing that.
Yeah, I love that. And thinking about business, family, and success, you know, you work across television, media commentary, consultancy, you're a business owner. How do you balance that with family life? Because you're obviously in demand. You know, you're growing a successful business. How do you balance that?
I think for me, it's...
In other words, how much of a hard time is your wife giving you?
She doesn't give me too much of a hard time. I'd actually say I have a lot...
and actually, how much, one thing we haven't covered, which I want to add to this question, is how much did the negativity affect her in terms of that backlash?
Not really at all, to be honest with you, because she knows the reality of who I am and, you know, the person that I am and the relationship that we've got. You know, my wife is my best friend. I did the show and everything around it for her and for our family and the life we're trying to build. You know, she literally said it on the show as well in the final five. So not really. And I think, you know, I lost my father-in-law and her dad during the process of the show, back of her mind. And to be honest with you, even whilst the show was coming out, was really not my priority, to be honest with you. You know, I was still working, you know, alongside it, you know, but supporting her and being a part of it. Number one, my wife is my best friend. You know, we love doing stuff together. We do dumb shit all the time just to just spend time with each other. And we love it. We bowl all the time. We go bowling. There's a brilliant deal. I'm not doing the PR for Hollywood Bowl here, but for anyone that is looking for something to do.
Do you think he tortures his wife like you and I do? Mine is in the business, and his has got a strong career as well. So,
well, my wife's goal is, you know, and I think this is a very admirable thing in the modern day. You know, she just wants to be a mum. Like she was born to be a mum, and I think, you know, the world has changed, and this is not me putting her in that position or saying you've got to be a step. No, that's what she was born to do. She is the most fabulously kind, caring person. And I'm very, very lucky to have that in my life. And, you know, that's a drive for me to be able to give her. Yeah, thank you. I'm very lucky, and that's a drive for it. But, you know, we go out and we go bowling. You get 2 games and a drink for a tenner at Hollywood Bowl. That's a cracking deal. And you get a beer with that as well. So can basically, with £6 a pint nowadays, it's like £2 a game of bowling. No, I'm not a keen bowler, but I am now because it's cheap and something fun to do on a Tuesday night.
How does it work? She has the beer, you play bowling.
To be honest with you, I try and not drink too much during the week because I go to so many meetings where I end up drinking. But this is, again, another conversation. But in terms of how I balance it, the number one thing is happiness. If I am genuinely unhappy for too long, there's no point doing this, right? Because if I'm unhappy for too long, it affects, you know, her life, it affects my life. What am I doing? Listen, there's times to grind. I am absolutely not saying that I love every second of what I do all the time. You know, we discussed this at the top of the podcast. I don't love what I do all the time.
Tell us about it.
Yeah, and this is why you made the podcast, and it's why I'm here. But at the end of the day, I do what I do because it makes me happy. It helps me to do things for her and to be able to spend the time with her. So if I end up becoming too busy, you know, I look at my diary for the next few weeks, I will just block out time. There is just, the reality of it is, you know, every single night this week, I know a lot of my friends in relationships. I've got some friends, you know, they basically don't see their other half during the week. You know, they'll maybe see them for half an hour before bed, an hour before bed. You know, we will try and spend, you know, when we're working from home together, you know, we'll go for a walk at lunch together. You know, we'll go out and do an activity after work. We do spend like a shitload of time together because that's what's important to me. And if I start to lose that, you know, a conversation was started about potentially doing a job abroad that, you know, more money than I would even know what to do with at this stage of my life. I'm not a particularly extravagant person. And the conversation pretty much ended there because I wouldn't do it. I don't, it wouldn't bring me happiness. It wouldn't be the right thing for me. So if I'm deprioritizing the things that make me happy, then I've lost my purpose. And, you know, I will have to drag myself back at times in my life. I'm 100% sure. And, you know, it's very easy in the, you know, the grand scale of things where things just keep coming and you lose sight of the vision. But that's my responsibility. That's our job as a couple to make sure we focus on those things. And I think we've done a fucking good job of it so
I love
far.
that. And I kind of just to close the episode, you've built a career, you know, helping others find the right words. This is a tough question, but when you look back over your journey so far, what's the conversation you're most proud of having?
I am going to give you, to start, a little bit of a politician's answer, but then I am going to pick one out. So I think I've mentioned this a couple of times in the podcast. I've been hugely fortunate that I can literally pin how 6 or 7 conversations out of thousands I've had have just completely changed the course of my career. And I can look back on them. So I did a Sky, and I'm going to very briefly run through this. I did a Sky News or a BT Sports market research where I met someone, and then I put out a Facebook post endorsing or challenging something on Facebook, and then a guy I'd met at that market research hired me to be the first campus director of a think tank. And from that think tank, I met a guy who was working in the medicinal marijuana stuff that I mentioned, and I didn't know what I wanted to do with my life, but I found out that he does public affairs and PR, and I literally went to him. I said, I don't understand what you do, I just know that's what I want to do, and I started working with him. And that opened the doors to me to understand what PR and public affairs was. And from there, I started, you know, I got into PR, and then I started going to networking events. I met this guy, Oliver Aguz. Oliver Aguz then introduced me to Trey Lowe, who was on season 18 of The Apprentice. Season 18 of The Apprentice, I apply for that, I get onto the show, and now I'm here, right? So there's a few conversations throughout all of that. I can literally track back to the start, how one thing led to me meeting the next. The biggest jump, I've picked out 2, right? I thought of this before the podcast. Again, it's not scripted, but I did think of it from, I thought this question might be asked. But I thought about this before the podcast, and there's 2, right? The first one, and I think this is really important, is my wife. You know, the conversation where my shit chat, I managed to pull my wife. She is the funniest part of the discourse around me on the show, was people saying my wife was really fit. And I said this in my engagement speech. I was like, oh my God, like, I can't wait for the day that you're picking our kids up from school. And so, like, one of the kids goes, oh, Thingy's mum is a MILF. And I was like, oh, for fuck's sake. I was like, and you know, it's all of this kind of stuff. Like,
Welcome to real life.
Yeah, I'm so blessed that my wife is stunning, but what's below that is way more important. And the person I am today is only because of who she's made me into, from the support, the love, everything she's given to me. I was not that person when she found me, and the person I am today, it all goes back to her, right? I am hugely grateful. And the Jewish Chronicle article summarizing my time on the show, the headline was, my wife deserves the credit, I'm just the moron in a chicken suit, which is what I was, right? And then
we should have had him on the on the podcast the day we spoke about our wives.
Yeah, we should have.
He's made. I think we're feeling a bit guilty now, are we?
Yeah, we might have to re-record.
Yeah, we have to re-record that. Has that gone out yet?
Well, this sounds like a therapy session. I could be sitting here. So when did it all start, lads? But no, in all seriousness, that's one, and I would pick that one out. And then from a business standpoint, all of them kind of changed my life. There's 2 that really changed my life, and all of the ones I mentioned really did. But Oliver Aguz, and I'm really looking forward to sending this to him because he's one of the most humble people I've ever met. He is Lord Sugar's IP lawyer, right? And I met him at a networking event, and we just got on, and he was like, let's go out for dinner. And I went out for dinner with him 2 days later. And then he introduced me to Trey, who then, obviously I got the experience of learning what goes on behind the scenes on The Apprentice. And he took me behind the scenes, Oliver Aguz, at the final. He started this journey of the biggest professional leap that I will ever make, because he just took a gamble and went, yeah, I like you. And that conversation from just going up to him at a networking event, and listen, credit to my boss at the time, Richard Merrin, that was on work hours. That business event was at 1:30, but that one conversation led to all of the other conversations that have opened more doors for me than I could have ever imagined. So I have to pin it back to that one, because without that conversation starting it, none of the other ones of The Apprentice and that major jump. And all of the ones I mentioned before caused big professional leaps. But I think it would be, putting my hands over my eyes and going la 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 to say that, The Apprentice has not given me this platform to be doing things like this and everything else around it. Fabulous.
Well, Lawrence, it's been an honour to have you on the podcast today. Thank you for your time. Thank you for your expertise and your wisdom. And we look forward to following that journey. We'll link to website, socials on the episode. We've gone over today, so we're giving Taylor, our editor, a bit of a challenge here. But thank you. And
it's a pleasure. Thank you for having me. It's been such a pleasure, and I've loved going into a bit of detail about the business side of things as well, and also just how The Apprentice have fed into it rather than just The Apprentice. So I've thoroughly enjoyed it. Thank you, chaps. And yeah, I look forward to being back for episode 2 of me.
Amazing.
What a great episode.
Until next time.